You tell yourself you're just a perfectionist, that you want to get everything right all the time, that you're meticulous, that you have high standards. But what if that's not the truth? What if perfectionism is just a mask, a carefully constructed excuse to never fully show up in your power? Because perfectionism isn't about excellence. It's about fear. It's about control. It's about making sure the world never sees your real edges, your boldness, your creativity, your full intensity. Because those things are unpredictable, messy, powerful. Somewhere deep inside, you're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of being seen. You're afraid of what would happen if you stopped hiding behind "not ready" and actually owned your strength. Because if you allowed yourself to step into your full power, you'd become undeniable. And that terrifies you more than imperfection ever could. So ask yourself, is your perfectionism about doing it right? Or is it about staying safe?
This fear didn't begin yesterday. It was planted long ago, when you were still learning how to be in the world. Maybe you were praised only when you excelled, when you impressed, when you made no mistakes. You learned that being perfect earned you love. But being messy, emotional, or loud, that got you silence, or worse, rejection. So what did you do? You became careful, controlled. You made yourself smaller in the name of being acceptable. You built your identity around not failing, not disappointing, not taking up too much space. And over time, this perfectionism became your shield, a survival strategy, a way to avoid the vulnerability of being truly seen, flaws and all. But here's the cost. You've disconnected from the raw, magnetic force inside you. That part of you that doesn't care about being approved, only about being true. You've learned to perform, but you haven't learned to live.
There's a strange paradox here. You long to feel confident, expressive, powerful. But the moment that energy begins to rise in you, something inside flinches. You doubt yourself. You rewrite your words. You shrink your ideas. Because stepping into that power would mean stepping out of the role you've always played. And that's terrifying. Because power, real power, isn't about control. It's about truth. It's about showing up even if your voice shakes. It's about letting go of the version of you that was built to be liked and becoming the version that's built to be real. But becoming real means being vulnerable. And being vulnerable means risking judgment, rejection, success. Yes, even success, because then you have no excuse to keep playing small. You say you want freedom, confidence, clarity, but are you willing to let go of the mask you've worn for years? If this resonates, it means something inside you is ready to heal, ready to rise. And if you're on that path, this space is for you. Subscribe and stay close. You're not alone in this.
You keep telling yourself, I'll act when I'm ready. I'll speak when it's perfect. I'll move forward once I'm more confident. But what if not ready is just a disguise, a way to delay the moment you finally show the world who you really are? Here's a hard truth. No amount of preparation will make you feel completely ready to be powerful. Because your fear isn't about lacking skills. It's about shedding the false self you've used to stay protected. You weren't meant to be flawless. You were meant to be real. And realness doesn't wait until it feels safe. It steps forward while still trembling. Every time you overthink, over-edit,
or hold back, you're not improving your work. You're denying your voice. You don't need more time. You need permission, not from them, from you. And maybe, just maybe, you've been ready all along.
There's a kind of perfectionism that's harder to spot because it looks like discipline, like drive, like high achievement. You look organized, productive, in control. People admire your work ethic. They call you impressive. But deep down, you know something's off. You're not thriving, you're performing. You're chasing approval, not purpose. You hide behind excellence because it feels safer than honesty. Safer than saying, I'm exhausted, I'm scared, I don't know who I am without this constant striving. You've confused productivity with worth, success with identity. But even when you reach your goals, something still feels empty because what you truly crave isn't praise, it's peace. Perfectionism tells you to keep running, but your soul keeps whispering, you don't need to earn your right to exist. And the day you finally stop proving yourself, that's the day your real power begins to wake up.
Perfectionism is rarely about doing things right. It's about protecting something deeper. A part of you that once felt unsafe when you were simply being yourself. Maybe someone shamed your creativity, mocked your confidence, punished your mistakes. So now, every time you try to show up fully, you hear that old voice. Careful, tone it down, don't draw too much attention. You think you're afraid of criticism, but what you're really afraid of is exposure, of being known, of standing in your light and realizing how powerful you actually are. Because that power demands responsibility. It demands courage. It asks you to stop hiding behind the lie that you're not enough. But here's the truth. You were never too much. They were simply too afraid to meet you there. You don't need to suppress your fire to keep others comfortable. You need to let it burn, softly, fiercely, honestly. That's where your freedom begins. If you stopped trying to be perfect, who would you be? That's the real fear, isn't it? Because so much of your identity has been built on being the responsible one, the high achiever, the one who never fails. But those roles are costumes. And after years of wearing them, they begin to feel like skin. So when you imagine letting go of perfectionism, it doesn't just feel like growth. It feels like death. The death of a version of you that kept you safe. But safety is not the same as aliveness. You don't need to be polished to be powerful. You don't need to be certain to be worthy. You only need to be real. And that's what perfectionism tries to keep buried. It tells you, if you're flawless, you'll be loved. But love was never meant to be earned. It was meant to be received. So who are you underneath it all? The world is not waiting for your perfection. It's waiting for you.
There comes a moment when the cost of staying small becomes heavier than the risk of being seen. A moment when the hunger for authenticity finally overpowers the fear of judgment. Maybe you're feeling that now, a quiet rebellion inside you, a voice saying, I'm done dimming my light to make others comfortable. This is where your healing begins, not when you fix yourself, but when you stop pretending you need fixing at all. Let go of the version of you that only acts when things are perfect. That version is cautious, yes, but also confined, also afraid. You don't need more strategies. You need more self-trust. Let the part of you that's wild, intuitive, imperfect, alive, let that part lead. Because your real power was never in your control. It was in your truth. And the more honest you become, the more magnetic you are. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And realness is irresistible in a world that's starving for it.
Power isn't loud. It isn't aggressive or dominating. True power is quiet confidence. It's the ability to stand in your truth without shrinking, without apologizing, without waiting for approval. And that's what perfectionism has been stealing from you. Not just your time or energy, but your ability to take up space as you truly are. Because when you're constantly editing yourself, you're not evolving, you're erasing. There is no perfect version of you waiting somewhere in the future. There is only this version, right now. Braver than you think, smarter than you give credit for, and more ready than you realize. The world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your presence, your honesty, your fire. The kind of power you're afraid of, it's not dangerous, it's sacred. And the moment you stop apologizing for who you are, that's when your real life begins.
The truth is simple, but hard to accept. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to hide behind endless preparation, flawless performance, or the approval of others. All you need is the willingness to be truly seen. This is terrifying, no doubt. Standing in your own light when you've spent years hiding in shadows is a radical act of courage. It means peeling away the armor you've built layer by layer, revealing the scars you hoped would stay hidden forever, showing your doubts, your fears, your messy, beautiful humanity. But this vulnerability is not weakness. It's the very doorway to your freedom. Because behind the fear, beyond the mask of perfectionism, lies your authentic self, whole, powerful, alive. Your power doesn't come from control or from never making mistakes. It comes from embracing your imperfections and allowing yourself to exist fully, exactly as you are. It comes from owning your story, your triumphs, your failures, your contradictions without apology. Today, I invite you to choose courage over comfort, to choose presence over perfection, to choose yourself in all your complexity, rawness, and truth. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out, to shine your light, even if it shakes, to create boldly, love fiercely, and live unapologetically. And when you finally step into that power, you'll realize something incredible. The fear that held you back was never the enemy. It was a signpost pointing you toward your greatest growth. Your real power is sacred. It's a force that cannot be contained or controlled, only embraced. It's your birthright. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop hiding? To stop shrinking? To stop chasing perfection as a shield? The world is waiting not for a perfect version of you, but for the real you, the one who's brave enough to show up, imperfect and powerful.
Will you answer the call?